So like I said, we're going to try something new. We're going to talk today about the USN, US Navy heavy cruiser line in World of Warships. This is something that I want to go into. We do grind assist in the game, but we don't often take time to stop and talk about the actual ships within that line. So what you're going to see me talk about here is a little bit of the history and the characteristics of the ships. Okay, you're going to see me talk about suggested captain build. Actually, we'll just call it a suggested ship build because whatever. And then ideally, we're going to play a game of one of those ships in that line. Now, there's a few caveats here. Keep in mind, my focus is going to be on tier 5 and up to 10, although super ships generally follow the rules of the ship line as well, so a lot of times it can apply too. But the whole idea is to give you a little bit of a review of the line and what to expect about it. I have written down some notes prior to it as well, so I can make sure that I can clue into whatever else is important, but we're going to start by looking at the tech tree. And we're talking about the heavy cruiser line, which is here. It starts at Pensacola, works its way down to the Annapolis. Many of you may be considering resetting lines, or like I said, you're working up the line to start. I'm going to skip talking, therefore, about 1 through 4, and in this case, 1 through 5, because these cruisers, 1 through 4, don't matter. And then once you get to 5, it's an Omaha. It's a light cruiser anyway. So let's start with what a heavy cruiser is. In game as well as in real life, a heavy cruiser typically has 8-inch guns. These are 203 millimeter, and then I'm just going to say plus. For the United States Navy, it's almost always 203 millimeter. Iron Mios, does this apply to any premium ships? Yes, we can talk about that as well. But my main focus is just talking through the line. Okay, so these are ships that have 8-inch guns. Typically, they have stronger armor as well because of this. Let me do a little indent there. Okay, so they typically are going to have stronger armor. One of the big characteristics in this game with the heavy cruisers is they get increased pen angles with their AP. Now, what that means is they will pen at a steeper angle than normal. So everybody knows that if you're full flat broadside, a shell will penetrate that armor, right? You can be at a certain angle to that flat broadside to pen, which is, I believe, generally 60 degrees. Now, the thing about the USN is you have a steeper angle. So you can pen at even more of an angle than you would normally. This means you get more citadels, you get more penetration damage if you're using AP. There's nothing special really about the HE shells.
It's basically the out of bounds check where it kicks in.
Mm-hmm. And you want to explain what that means?
Typically a shell that is hitting at an angle of 30 degrees, between 45 and 60 is usually where it starts.
Yep.
So if we take it away from the 90 degrees, this means if you're angled 30 degrees to something, you're automatically auto-bouncing this shell. It can't penetrate.
Right.
So,
okay.
And for the USN cruisers, and at 45 degrees, it's like basically a coin flip, and there's some internal mechanics that determine whether the shell will penetrate or it will bounce. Mm-hmm. And for the USN cruisers, that window is different and in favor of the USN cruisers. So you could get penetrations at an angle where a different ship, for example, an IGN cruiser, would bounce.
Right. So that's what gives the USN heavy cruisers their kind of specialty. Okay. That's the characteristics. Now, for those of you guys who maybe are new players in the game, oftentimes this is a good starter line. This is a great line to work your way up. You'll learn cruisers by playing these lines because they're kind of generally speaking, they have, I guess you could say, jack of all trades kind of mentality. They're decent all arounders. Okay. With good-ish armor, good maneuverability-ish, good reload, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so those are the main characteristics of the line as a whole, and we can add to that radar as one of the big characteristics of the line that starts to come into play later on. It starts at the tier 8, so 8 to 10. Well, technically 11, I guess you could say, because of Annapolis. The other thing too is there are premium cruisers out there. Indianapolis is an example of a premium ship that does have the radar. That's at tier 7, and that's what makes her unique and special, is that gimmick. All right, so let's talk about the individual ships. I want to go through each one and just talk to you guys a little bit about... I want a preview ship? I think I want to go to equipment. I think I just go to equipment. That's better. Actually, well, whatever. So here's the Pensacola. It's the first of the heavy cruiser line. She's a very fun ship. She's a ship that I, quite frankly, really enjoy. You'll note that she's quite narrow. Let me put a regular camo on, or just drop the camo altogether. There we go. Well, you can see her a little bit easier. But if you look at it, she's very narrow. She's like a pencil. So I call her sometimes Pensacola. Because she's so narrow, you can dodge torpedoes and incoming fire quite well with this ship. If you are, you've got your head on a swivel looking around and you're anticipating them. The other big thing about her, if you look, her turrets, she's kind of an oddity. Her upper turrets, her super firing turrets, have more barrels, 3 barrels, and then there's 2 below. Also an oddity is the fact that she's got 5 barrels on either side. In World War II, historical, like real life, the Pensacola was found to be too top heavy, and therefore there were concerns about her stability in like storms and high water, to the point where the succeeding models all came with 3 turrets, all with triple guns instead. It lowered the center of gravity a bit. So, like I said, really good agility. If you look at maneuverability, I don't remember if I've got the stuff on or not, but 620 meters for turning circle is quite nice. Good speed and all that kind of stuff. And if we look at the armor layout, you can see she does have an armor belt, which, played correctly, you can use to bounce a good amount of shells. Pay close attention to this one up here. That means that if you are showing bow on or a little bit aside and you can bait them to hit you here, a lot of those battleships will bounce their shells at the waterline. So that's the Pensacola. Like I said, one of my favorite ships. From there, you move up to the tier 7, which I like to call the New Ordeal. And you can see the U.S. Navy changes their doctrine and drops the 4 turret design. And here's the 3 turret design I was just talking about. 3 turrets, triple barrels. Okay, they're still 203 millimeter guns. They still have that American piercing, the extra improved pen angles that you see with the Pensacola. Okay, but now you've got 6 guns pointed forward instead of 5, and you've got 3 pointed to the rear instead of 5 as well. I like to call this ship the New Ordeal. She was originally the tier 8 in the American cruiser line, and then when Wargaming added the light cruisers and they created the split, we saw the New Orleans move to tier 7. She's okay. She's okay. If you can get really good with using the rudder and stuff, you can make her dance, but it's a bit of an acquired taste. Now, you'll note that her belt armor is much stronger in the broadside as a more traditional layout. So if you are showing like this kind of side to a battleship. You see shells coming, you turn hard like this, and you bait the shells to hit this extra plate here. Boom, they just bounce right off. That's the idea, at least. But between the 6 and 7, there's not too much to add to the ship. That still only comes with hydro. It still only comes with a fighter plane, and of course your standard DCP. So there's not too much else to talk about with her. So we'll move on to the Tier 8 Baltimore. This is when things get a little spicy. The Baltimore used to be the Tier 9. And then it got changed. Again with the line split. So once again, you've got your 6-inch guns at the bow and at the stern. You'll note the difference in her appearance with the secondaries. She's got a lot more 5-inch secondaries. This really has an impact on anti-air, which I forgot to mention as a characteristic. So let me kind of add that as well. Okay, strong AA is another thing for this line in general, Pensacola up. At Tier 8, you start getting the radar. This reaches out to 10 kilometer. Lasts longer than the Soviet radar does, but fantastic for hunting down destroyers and the like. Okay. Beyond that, she also has the ability to take hydro. I should have mentioned earlier, you could also take defensive anti-air. Most of the time, you're going to take hydro. Defensive anti-air just isn't as impactful as you would normally wish. Let's take a look at the armor layout, and you can see that the Baltimore has slightly thicker armor compared to the New Ordeal at Tier 8. It's also got kind of a weird little, kind of a Tetris piece look to it. It's kind of funny. Moving from there, we go to Tier 9, the Buffalo.
Wait a second. That's also where they get the 27mm bow and stern, which is significant, and only a couple of cruiser lines have that.
Thank you. So, one of the things that Wargaming did as a balancing factor after the line split was they changed the bow and stern armor to 27mm. Now, 27mm is very important because the formula for overmatch is you take the millimeter and you multiply that by 14.3. Okay, so at 27 millimeters, multiply that by 14.3. That means that for Baltimore and up, you need larger than 386 to overmatch. Okay, that's how it applies for. This is how it applies for our situation. Okay, 14.3 exactly. So that means 406s will overmatch. Okay, so that's American battleships and a lot of other ones. That's a 16-inch shell essentially. But anything below that, if you point your bow at like say 380s, boink, they won't overmatch.
And there's a lot of 380mm battleships at this tier, like all the French ones, some of the British ones. So you get additional protection here that is relevant.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point. If we go back to Tier 8, where did it go? Where did it go? I'm on Baltimore, sorry. The New Ordeal. Where are you? There you are. If we go back to the New Orleans, you can see that it's 25. 2 millimeters makes a big difference. In this case, 2 millimeters is 28 millimeters of gun caliber, right? So 380s will overmatch a New Orleans. Hey, Wolfie. So that's important. Now, let's move on from there to the Tier 9, and that's the Buffalo. This was added when Wargaming did the line split. And here's our Buffalo. You'll note that it's very similar to, at least in appearance, to the Baltimore at Tier 8. The main difference is the Buffalo gets one additional turret in the rear. This is a bit of a noob trap. A lot of people will take the Buffalo and they will try to get all their turrets on target like this. You can see how much side is being shown. A lot of Buffalo players will perish because of that. The actual best way to get all turrets on target with the Buffalo is firing over your shoulder at an enemy that's, say, back over here. Because the front guns can turn at a steeper angle than the rear guns can turn facing forward. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you want to get all guns in, kite away.
The ship is the odd one out in the line. It quite
Yes.
frankly shouldn't be there.
No.
Because the Buffalo actually, like, it has the extra turret, but the reload is actually lower. So the DPM is the same as you have on the Baltimore. But in order to get there, you have to use all the guns. Whereas the Baltimore, you could get 2/3 of the DPM by just using the front guns. If you try to do the same in a Buffalo, you actually have lower DPM despite having a higher tier ship.
So the
And that
problem
makes it uncomfortable to play for a lot of players.
Right. So the problem for these ships, up until this point, you can make the argument that you can bow in and just shoot at things in front of you and not worry about anything else. They always make the comment about the island waifu. You have an island next to you, on either side of you, use it as your shield, and you're only shooting at things in front. Buffalo is different in that if you do that, you're significantly hampering your combat effectiveness to the point where this is the oddball out, as Grunty said. You want to be kiting away. You want to be presenting this kind of an angle to your opponent and not a bow in angle. So Buffalo plays very differently because of that. She does still have the radar. She does still have the ability to slot in Hydro or defensive. I still think Hydro is the better choice. If you're going to play with a carrier player, sure, you can make the argument for defensive. Otherwise, Hydro is probably the better pick. Please don't run fighter. Please do not run spotting aircraft. I should have mentioned that earlier as well. Some people might be tempted to run spotting aircraft to shoot things at longer range. Honestly, the radar is so much more impactful. There's no reason that you want to run the spotting aircraft. And then from tier 9, we move up to tier 10, which is, of course, the Des Moines. And the Des Moines is the ultimate edition of this ultimate level, so to speak, right? This is where it's at. It's got really fast reloading main guns. It goes back to that standard 2 turrets front, 1 turret rear layout. A little bit thicker armor plating. Actually, no, it just extends farther forward compared to the Buffalo. There's that 27mm bow. But the big thing about the Des Moines is that she's also quite speedy and can be used to hunt down destroyers and that sort of thing. Again, you've got your 10-kilometer radar, and you've got your hydroacoustic search or your alternatives. And then now Wargaming has released the Annapolis, the Supership version of all this. Same deal. It plays very much the same as the Des Moines. It just has bigger secondaries, as you can see. It's got 1 additional turret in the rear. It's got access to the funny button so it can unload on things that are broadside. It's a pretty ridiculous ship. And it's even got a thicker armor belt. So there you go.
It's one of the strongest super ships you can play. Often referred to as a tier 12 ship, together with the Conde.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's getting changed in 13.1, but frankly, those changes don't really matter too much. So, where do you shoot these guys? Good question, Aramios. And Electric, yes, we'll talk about the unique upgrade for the Des Moines in a little bit. Where do you shoot these guys? Well, frankly, if there's somebody that's showing you bow on, let me put the armor layout back on. If they're shooting you bow on, then you've got a couple of options. One is you aim higher. You try to get into that superstructure. It's a quite long superstructure. Let me drop the superstructure for a sec there. Especially at long range, you can plunge fire. That means that you fire so long the shell comes down at a pretty steep angle. You can plunge through the deck armor. Even if you don't get citadels, that's a significant amount of damage. If you are running a ship that has greater than 406 millimeters, another 380, whatever it was I said on that thing, 386. You got a ship with over 386 millimeter guns, then something that's bow onto you, you literally shoot it right at the bow. Let me drop the bow armor plating, and if you hit it at the right spot, see this very small spot right here? Boom, citadels through the bow. And that's true for every ship in the line. Here's the Buffalo, same deal. See that? Overmatch the bow, boom, right into the barbettes, nothing but Citadel, or even below that to the athwart ship. Okay, so if they're showing you bow on, you want to definitely shoot in the face. Okay,
If you can overmatch it.
if you can overmatch it. If you can't, like I said, you might want to aim a little bit higher. Try to get the superstructure. You might even be able to take out the guns, which is always fun. Yeah, exactly right. You can break turrets. Now, there's another big weakness for the American light cruiser or heavy cruiser line, and that is that the rear has a flat armor profile. All right, and so if you can get in behind, and again you overmatch the stern, you have really good opportunities to get shells into the Citadel or even just full pens through casemate armor. Will do a lot of damage, especially to the tier 10, the Des Moines. Where's the Des Moines? There you go. Okay, it's got that flat butt. And here we go. Look at that. That's all Citadel in the Des Moines. That's the biggest weak spot on a Des Moines.
Yeah, you're much better. Like if you're the Des Moines player, you basically don't want to be hiding away at mid distances because the risk of taking the damage right there is way too high.
You compare that with the
facing the opponent and reversing.
and you can see look at all the athwart ship Citadel armor on the bow too, and that's why again, if you're a battleship that can overmatch, you aim for the Citadel. If they're bow in, you just aim for the middle section of the bow or the stern, and you get a good amount of Citadels that way. If you are not in a battleship that can overmatch, you can aim for full pens, and what that means is you can aim for something that's bow on. This is where you might want to consider switching to HE, or you can try to break the turrets, because the turrets are relatively weak on Des Moines. Alternately, if you're lucky and they show you a good amount of side, you can try to aim at their side. You have to be careful though, because like I said, a good Des Moines player will bait you into shooting them at the waterline, and then they'll turn in hard and present this kind of angle. Boom, bounce off. So if you're up against a really good Des Moines player who's paying attention to you, aim higher. Aim for what Putin likes to call the guaranteed damage. Aim for the upper armor belt. If he turns like this, you'll still pen the upper armor belt. Boom. Okay? So that's the big difference there. I think that covers where to aim on them. And by the way, chat, feel free to ask additional questions if you've got them. One question was, what do I think about the unique upgrade? The unique upgrade for the Des Moines at tier 10 has been changed slightly since its original inception. Originally, it allowed you to speed forward and backward really quickly. And now I believe it's only forward when you get that extra little oomph, that extra little boost. So
I think you're correct there.
Yeah,
like you
it used to be
accelerate really quickly. Like it's great, like great upgrade. But you have to be careful if you, especially the island camper, if you accelerate, you might be shooting out too much, and then it takes a lot of time to get back into that safety because you're not accelerating backwards as quickly as you do forwards.
Right. It's pretty interesting when you move forward, especially if you join the propulsion module as I have set up with it. The speed that you get from that is pretty crazy. I will say she's been nerfed again because in clan battles, I remember the days of being able to go forward, backward, and people couldn't hit me. That's changed now to the point where the best way to use this module, frankly, is crashing into islands. I know that sounds funny, but you back up, and then when somebody starts shooting at you, and you forward full right into an island, and then you back up again, and you keep doing that. So Des Moines plays a little bit differently than other heavy cruisers of the American heavy cruiser line, simply because of that. It's very much the Nazi effect. Yeah, it's pretty much a bow-in kind of like back and forth kind of thing. You don't have to play it that way, but you know.
If you're fighting a Des Moines that has this upgrade, you basically don't want to shoot it while it's stationary because it will accelerate forward quite quicker.
Yeah.
Wait until it's actually slowing down, and that's where you can hit it.
So what Grunty is saying, especially if you're a battleship playing at longer range, we go back to the armor scheme here. So you might think, okay, this guy's bow into you. I'm going to shoot right about here, right? So you're thinking, I'm going to shoot through that and hit the athwartship. Boom, citadels. Here's the problem. If the Des Moines pushes forward, moves forward, your shells are now going to hit more maybe on the barbette armor, maybe on the front plate. You might knock out a gun that way, but you're not going to citadel. Or maybe it goes into the casemate armor here.
It's probably honestly going just superstructure with the Des Moines, which how quickly it accelerates and how long the shells are in the time. You might even whiff completely and shoot over it and not hit anything.
Yep. There's a lot of unknowns and a lot of different scenarios that could be plagued. So I'm gonna pull back the whole.
Even if it's broadside behind an island, like it will go. By the time it's stationary, you shoot. By the time your shells land, they're completely behind the ship because it's so quick. Whereas if it's slowly reversing and you aim and the reversing, it's not gonna be able to speed up quickly enough because it's still reversing. You have a better chance of hitting that.
Right. So let's talk about highlights for a second. The ships that are highlights of this line, obviously Des Moines, right? Annapolis, of course. In my personal opinion, Pensacola. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Pensacola. So these three are the ones that I think are the best. The tier 6, the tier 10, and the tier 11. Do you see this the change there, the spread? 6, 10, and 11. So you start off really liking the Pensacola. And by the way, the Pensacola used to be not so much. She used to be tier 7. She used to have terrible concealment. Even then, like that's how I learned her. So she's even better now. But anyway, so you're going through 7, through 8, and through 9 just to get to the tier 10. Now let's talk about the lowlights. These are the ones that are more difficult or more painful to play. The New Orleans at tier 7 is absolutely pain. And then the Buffalo at tier 9 is also pain, mainly because of the turret layout I was telling you about earlier. The Baltimore's fine. Baltimore's okay. She's average. But New Orleans is painful to play because you really wish you had the radar, and you just don't. And the Buffalo, painful play. You really wish you could just bow in and shoot your guns, and you can. It's just nowhere near as effective. So
But the Baltimore teaches you how to play the Des Moines, kinda.
Hello there.
But everything you learned on the Baltimore, you need to forget when you play the Buffalo.
correct.
And once you finally manage to get comfortable with the Buffalo, and then you get the Des Moines, you have to forget everything you learned on the Buffalo because
Correct.
that's not how you play the Des Moines anymore. And that's
Correct.
the whole big problem with the line and the Buffalo in particular.
100% agreed. So Buffalo is by far the most pain. New Orleans is painful too. And but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that is the Des Moines and the Annapolis. So let's go into a suggested build for a ship. I'm going to pick the New Orleans because it's a low light, and we'll talk about that because frankly the build applies to every ship out there, maybe to an exception with Buffalo. But let's go into New Orleans. Part of the reason why I want to do New Orleans as well is because I don't think I have a 21-point captain on it. And yeah, I have a 19-pointer. And a lot of people on YouTube said, please, Zath, for the love of God, don't put a 21-point captain on it and show us a build with him. Please don't put one of the broken OP, a Halsey or Doe captains or Ovechkin on it because we don't have those. I heard you. That makes perfect sense. I love the suggestion. So let's take a look at the New Orleans. And let's talk about the captain build. First of all, I have a series on YouTube called Core Builds. Zath Chat Core Builds. Might be a good idea for you to check them out and get some ideas. This is how I build my ship. A huge caveat. This is how I build my ship. Me, personally, how I build it. Not necessarily the best way to play it or the way that you would want to play it. So please take the build with a caveat of salt here, okay, or a pinch of salt. It might not work for you, but this is what I do to start. I start by taking grease the gears. You need to be able to turn your ship and not out-turn your turrets. What that means is if your ship is turning, your turrets are able to track the target as the ship is turning. Okay? If you've ever experienced a ship turning hard, something over here, and you're trying to line your turrets up, but they keep going like this, that's pain. You need to make sure that you keep your turrets on target the whole time if you're going into a full turn. So for me, grease the gears is very important on every ship of the line, but especially on the New Orleans. Okay, I'm a huge priority target enjoyer. I want to know how many people are targeting me. I want to know when I need to dodge. I need to know when I need to look around and see where incoming shots could be coming from. So for me, priority target is huge. Also helps me when dealing with subs, and most importantly, Japanese destroyers. Any destroyer, frankly. If they are targeting me with guns, and then they switch to torpedoes, and then they switch back to guns, I know they fire torpedoes at me because it goes 1, 0, back to 1 again. So if one person's targeting me, they're using their guns. If it goes to 0, they just switched armament type to torpedoes, or they're targeting somebody else, right? And then if it goes back to 1 again, that tells me they're targeting me and they're firing torpedoes my way. So I like to know if I'm being targeted. Adrenaline Rush and Survivability Expert make perfect sense at tier 7 because Adrenaline Rush, of course, as you take damage, you intensify your guns. That comes in very handy. Survivability Expert, why wouldn't you want additional hit points? At tier 7, 7 times 450 is a decent chunk of additional hit points. People can use priority target indicators against priority target users, though. Huh? Well, yeah, yes, Wolf, right. You can target, untarget, target, untarget. Like, you can keep doing that. Sure. That's kind of like that big brain Omega play, but most people don't think about that. Most people don't think about fake.
You can't really use that against people because you don't know if they even have the skill.
Right. You can try, and I've seen some replays. I've covered some replays like that. I've gone into Concealment Expert, and then I've gone into Top Grade Gunner as my next skills. Why wouldn't you want to be not detected as much, and why wouldn't you want your guns to be hotter, right? 8% main battery reload time is really sexy. You'll note this is a 19-point captain. I've used 17 points. I therefore have 4 remaining points. I have options. I could go radio location. If this was a ship with radar, I very well might do so. Other good skills that are nice to have, heavy AP shells, although it's just hard to find a place to put it. This ship does not have a heal, so Superintendent, even though it's recommended here, I would not take because there's no heal. Superintendent is huge on any ship with a heal. If it doesn't have a heal, it's still useful, but it's not as useful. And it doesn't have a radar either. It's even less useful at tier 7. So if this is a ship captain that you intend to keep at tier 7, there's no point in running Superintendent. Pack a punch, you don't have torpedoes. And your secondaries, that's a joke. You're not going to run Pack a punch. If you love HE shells and you just want to fire HE like crazy, I guess you could go for this. But again, the bread and butter of this line is AP, not as useful. Pyrotechnician or Demolition Expert, also not as useful. Consumables enhancements, again, you don't have radar, not as useful. I could see the argument for focus fire training because focus fire training does boost your anti-air a bit. That's kind of sexy, but most carrier players that know how to play carrier know to watch out for American cruisers. So I feel like this is going to be a wasted skill for you.
It's also an odd tier ship. So
right.
There's no direct CV on its tier.
Because of that, you either
face
face
a bit less bad. Like I'd be more inclined to use that skill on the Pensacola at tier 6 than I am at the New Orleans at tier 7.
The reason why Grunty is saying that is because at tier 8 or 6, you can have carriers, not tier 7 since it's an odd tier. So if you take the ship into a game and you are bottom tier, you have a chance of seeing a tier 8 carrier. If you're top tier, you have a chance of seeing a tier 6 carrier. Against the tier 6 carrier anti-air, You don't even need focus fire training. It will obliterate the planes most of the time. And then if you're in a bottom tier situation, gets tier 8s, this would be helpful. But do you see how there was like an if? Here's the other big if. If you're going to take the ship into ranked battles, clan battles, whatever, this is useless. Completely useless because it's out tier only. So I would not recommend going. I mean, you could maybe think about it for 6, 8, and 10. Frankly, I still wouldn't, but that's just me. Consumable specialist, again, you don't have radar. You don't have a heal. You don't care. There's no point in consumable specialist. By the way, heal doesn't get infected by it, so it's just the radar you're looking for. No. Gunfeeder. Now, this is actually a good skill to have in any American cruiser. So Gunfeeder should be taken if you can find the points for it. The ability to switch between HE and AP quicker comes in very handy, especially because Wargaming changed things around, and now Gunfeeder has a bigger impact than it used to. Incoming fire alert. If you don't want to use priority target, you can take that for the additional situational awareness. I don't like that. I still like knowing how many people are targeting me. It just gives me so much more information for free that I didn't have to work for. And then finally, last stand, as Wolfie says, it's still a useful skill. If I lose my engines or my rudder, I can go ahead and DCP that. I will say, if you play bow in, you probably aren't going to have this happen to you much. This is more for, especially like a Buffalo who's going to be stern on and stuff like that. You'll lose your rudder more frequently. So, see 8 enemies targeting you. I'm in danger. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Scythe Animations over on YouTube. Hello, by the way. Sorry I missed your hi there. How are you? Happy Sunday. So this is my build for the Tier 7 New Orleans. Where would I go from here? Well, I could do Gunfeeder. And if I do that, though, now I'm limited to 3 points or less. So at that point, God, I don't know. I mean, there's really not a lot out here. That's the problem with my build at this point. I might pick up that.
Heavy AP.
You could also go, yeah, you could do the heavy AP for the 5% additional damage. If you're firing mostly AP, fine. If you're the kind of person that fires mostly AP, I'm like, these two work well together, right? You switch to AP when you need to, and that AP does more damage.
It's probably the biggest bonus you have left for 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
At least for these ships, like where the superintendent doesn't play a role.
Yes.
Like.
Now, Wolfie says, I figure I'm already being targeted by everybody that has a line of fire on me. Thus, position is important. Position is important, but if you say to yourself, I'm always targeted if I'm detected, the problem with that is you don't know how many are detecting. And I know that that doesn't seem like a big deal, but there's a big difference between 1 or 2 and 5 or 6. 5 or 6 tells you need to get the F out now. Find a way to go dark, and then try to run away if you can. 1 and 2, figure out who those 1 or 2 people are, angle accordingly, and you're fine. You're safe. You don't need to worry about it. So that's why I like having that. So those are my commander skills. As far as my upgrades, I always go for main battery. Engine room protection just makes so much more sense over damage control. No, you could do defensive anti-air, or you could do hydro. To me, it's not as useful in a tech tree ship because, frankly, I'm not going to be playing these beyond just grinding up the ship line. And then we've got aiming systems in slot 3 and in slot 4, propulsion. I could take steering as well. Let's take a look at what my maneuverability is. 6.9 seconds. I want my cruisers to have under 10-second rudder shift. It already has 10-second rudder shift, so I'm going to go ahead and take aiming systems. Now, I could also take the, research all the upgrades. I didn't originally because I was just power grinding through the line when I reset them all. I'll go ahead and pick it now for the extra 10% main battery range. It's fine. It's nice. Now it's elite status. Oh, boy. But there you go. And then flags, anti-det, fire reduction, ramming, because you just never know when you need to ram somebody. HE is good. I did take this one for the extra hydroacoustic surge runtime. It's not necessary. You could take the anti-air flag instead. I did consumables. Again, not incredibly important because it's really only hydro and your DCP that you really care about getting back up again. Speed is good. So I could take anti-air. That's the only other flag I really could take, or flooding reduction. But frankly, if you take a flood and it lasts and all that, then you've really done screwed up in your positioning or whatever. So, chat, do you guys have any further questions about the USN heavy cruiser line? Do I rearrange consumable buttons for muscle memory? No. Here's the problem. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and right here he's talking about, right? And the problem that I have is I have played this game so long that I learned without reordering consumables. Now you guys all have the ability to do that, so all you youngins out there. But I've already learned how to deal with that. What I have done, as you can see, is I've mapped my buttons. R, T, G. Why R, T, and G? Because they're all within range of my index finger, my left index finger. Makes it far easier to use those 3 core consumables, okay? Versus I think default is R, T, Y. The Y is really hard to get to. So R, T, G I find more useful.
Yeah, it goes R, T, Y, U, I.
Yeah, right. So I think I do R, T, G, Y, H. I think is how I have mine set up. I use the V key for victory for defensive anti-air or reinforcement sector. I use the B key for quick comms, so I can do that again with my left finger. And I use the N for the horn. I never really use the horn, so I don't care.
I've bound all the consumables to my thumb buttons on the mouse.
Fair enough.
And I remap them, like I have all my consumables on the same button. Like every single heal I have is on the same button. Every single smoke I have is on the same button.
Sure.
My hydro is always on the same button. Like it takes you a while to get used to it if you rebind it. And there might be some ships where there's conflicts. For example, my smoke and my radar would always be on the same button.
Yep.
But now there's a European destroyer line that has a smoke and a radar. So you run
So
into some problems there.
Right. So as part of my promise to you all, I will play a game in the New Orleans because I feel like she is the weakest of the games. I'll play a random battle. If anybody wants to join, send me a message in game. I will not promise you it will be a great game, but it's available if you guys would like to join me. In the meantime, there were questions about the premiums that are similar. Here's one premium that is similar, the Indianapolis. She is the same idea as the New Orleans. However, the big thing about her is her radar. She has 10-kilometer radar at tier 7. I'll repeat that, 10-kilometer radar at tier 7. So in a situation like ranked, where you're always playing tier 7, this comes in really handy, having that extra ability. And by the way, Indianapolis is getting a main battery reload buff in 13.1 in the next upcoming patch.
To the same rate as the New Orleans is now, like.
Correct.
Basically, there is no point in playing the New Orleans anymore if you have an Indianapolis, unless you're actually grinding the line.
Right. Other heavy cruisers of note is the Tulsa. The Tulsa has, again, the 203 millimeter guns. These are Des Moines guns. These are Des Moines guns. Just send me a message, Grunty, because in case anybody else does. But these are Des Moines guns with the auto loaders at tier 9 instead of tier 10. And it plays very much like a Des Moines would. Frankly, the Tulsa is a better stopgap for tier 9 compared to the Buffalo. So I don't know why. Thank you, Grunty. I don't know why that is the case, but Wargaming did it this way. Other heavy cruisers of note is the Salem, which you can get at Cole. It's a Des Moines, but with super heal instead of standard heal. It's got a shorter range, I like to call T-Rex radar, which Raptors finally grabbed a hold of. And it's 8.5 instead of 10. Wargaming likes your money. They don't like my money because I haven't paid them anything. I paid them $20 in my 8 years of playing this game. So
They like my money because I'm a whale.
I will say that when the producer at the time realized that I'd only spent $20 in the game, he said a few choice words about me because I was not feeding his dog for him. And I just laughed and I said, well, your dog can suck it. Alaska.
I'm a cat person anyway. I don't care about your dog.
There are super cruisers as well. The Alaska and Puerto Rico are like that. They play very differently, so we're not going to go into detail on that right now. So, last chance if anybody wants to join for a div. I promised you guys we would go into a tier 7 game as a chance to just talk about, whoops, not the Helena, sorry. As a chance to talk about the ships and all that kind of stuff.
I have a question, Zath. I reset my Russian destroyer line and I have the tier 6. Do you mind if I play the tier 6?
I really don't care.
Okay.
All good. I'm going to put my standard captain that I showed you guys without any additional stuff. Electric, your tier 7 captains are 1 point only. If that's what's preventing you from joining the div, no worries. But I don't care. Moore's Elite, come on in.
It is probably worth it at tier 7. Like, I'm not suggesting you should use your commander XP for it, but you can get a 6-point captain for I think 900,000 credits, which might be worth a consideration instead of using a 1-point captain.
Yeah, if you've got the credits, and frankly, credits can be ground through, so I'm kind of with Grunty on this. Just spend the credits and get a tier 6 or level 6 captain. A 6-point captain actually does matter. My core builds, if you check my YouTube page for my core builds, frankly, you want a 10-pointer. 10-point is the point that you want to be on for the most part. Some ships you can get away with you need more than it. You need 14, but for pretty much every ship in the game, you want a 10-point captain.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I personally would spend Elite Commander XP too to get it to 10, but some people might not have the Elite Commander XP to do that.
Right. All right, we're gonna go ahead and drop the notepad.
Is really free except for credits, and I consider credits free.
Credits, frankly, is just play the game more. That's all there is to it. All right, here we go. We are middle tier. Grunty is bottom tier, but that was by choice, so we worked out.
Yeah, I'm happy that we didn't get into tier 9 games, so I can't complain about this.
All right, so initially, I've got some decisions to make. The biggest decision is where do I want to go? This is a largish map. There's a lot of cover in various locations. I have a Furious to deal with, which is a tier 6 carrier. The carrier part I don't care about. It's the spotting part that matters to me. I'll be spotted more often than I would expect.
It's also Nebraska.
That's correct. Battleship-wise, we've got Nebraska, Champaign, and Alabama that all have the American 406mm guns, which means if I'm bow on, I can be overmatched. Okay, the Sharn 43 cannot overmatch me. The Arizona, their 350s cannot overmatch me either. Shimanto, Cleveland, Helena, York are my food. If I can find them and I can smack them with AP, good times. And then the Cossack and the Gallant are problematic for me. So you can see I'm immediately heading towards the A cap here because this part of the map is more comfortable. Now, if you're not used to a ship, one of the things that I highly recommend you do at the beginning of a game is what I'm doing here. Change your ship direction a lot with your rudder. Get a habit, get an idea, get a feel for how long it takes for you to switch your rudder, because that helps you understand your turning circle and how responsive things are. Look at this. Look at my turning radius. This is such a tight turning radius. It's very sexy. What's up, Big O? All right, I see Helena, a Champagne. We've got an alt.
You know it's Champagne, right?
Yeah, I like to call it Champagne. You've started your own clan, Wolfie.
All
Nice.
stations requesting fire on the designated target.
And frankly, what else are you doing at the start of a battle anyway? You might as well wag your tail a bit like a shark and get an idea of how it feels. Dun, dun. Dun,
I
dun,
have to smoke up. Nebraska launched torpedo bombers over my head.
dun, 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 dun. Cleveland is running away. He's got radar. I am detected.
Oh, Nebraska is blind dropping on me. I wonder if he's looking.
What's up, Sea Bear? Now, I like to play the ship more of a kiting away positioning, so you can see that I am now giving side, but also slowing down. This is, to me, much better than sitting bow in, because, frankly, if I'm bow in, I could be in trouble. Nebraska, speaking of being in trouble, is charging you pretty hard there, Grunty.
I think he's beaching himself on this island, though.
All right, here's a good example. York is showing broadside now. He's decided to turn. We call this the gamer turn, or I like to call it the cruiser loser turn.
Torpedoes astern.
And we got
Nebraska.
torpedoes.
Torpedoes astern.
Still burning.
Torpedoes astern.
Yeah, I gotta leave this. The Alabama is coming to now.
Okay, then leave it. I mean, you got the cap, didn't you?
Yeah, I got the cap. I got good damage on the Nebraska. I was farming him
I see
very,
that.
very well.
Concentrate fire on the
And
enemy
there's the
warship.
Cossack.
Attention. Reporting the
But
target
I have
position.
overstayed my welcome.
Now, right now, I'm detected by one, or targeted by one. So that tells me I can afford to angle to the Cossack and not be concerned about him. About these battleships, I should say, to the south. Detected now, and one person targeting. It's definitely not the Cossack. Now it tells me I need to turn out. Nice hits there. All right, now notice that Champagne shot at me at max range. Again, that's why the party target helps me. It tells me when I need to disengage. I knew the Cossack wasn't targeting me, so therefore I knew I needed to back off and just go dark, which is what I did. So here's where changing gun feeder would be helpful. All right, York just got
Mexico?
smacked. Shimanto going into sea.
Nebraska is coming out broadside if you have range.
I do not.
Unfortunate.
Well, BDR, thanks for the follow. Now, I've got the ability to move farther south here, and maybe I can get a good shot on the Helena. The difficulty is he needs to back up and be spotted.
Who?
The Helena. He's shooting, so it's a moment of time. It's a moment of time before I spot him because he's shooting.
I'm still spotted. The Cleveland is still here. Just staying.
Mm-hmm.
Might want a hydro.
I'm turning before I open up my guns. I want to be in a kite away position so that when they do see me, I'm already turning away and running. One pen and one over pen. He continued to reverse. But now that I'm on his side, this Helena knows he's got to move forward. So I'm going to F3 on him to encourage my team to shoot him. Two people targeting me. That's going to be both the battleships. Nope. One of them's the Helena.
There's a Cossack.
I see him. I see him. Well, I saw him. There he
I
is.
had to smoke Nebraska planes.
Yeah. You're fine. Don't worry. See, all these battleships shooting at me. I don't care.
Cossack dropped me, missed.
Okay.
You're safe.
That sounds great. I'm focusing on the Helena then. Here's where, again, gun feeder would be very useful.
I'm leaving
Cleveland's
this
got
to
a
see if I
kite
can spot.
Helena died.
Helena's dead.
Okay.
Cossack
Switching
should be
back
low.
to
I hit
HE.
him pretty good.
Fighter returning
Yep.
to ship.
So now I'm starting to turn in towards the enemy. Helen was upset with his team. His position was too far advanced, expecting his flanks to be covered, and the team backed off. Oh well.
Cossack.
Yep, I see you're detected. Shells are quite floaty, as you can see, too, so you have to kind of take that into consideration as well when you are making your aiming.
Cossack.
Engines are out, that is correct. He just DCP'd. And he's gone.
Sweet.
Now is the part called the farm stage, where you just start shooting at battleships and they can't do anything about you. And Salty Chat does tell you that you're kicking their butt, right?
Victory is in sight.
Are we focusing the Amagi or the Champagne?
I only have the Arizona right now to shoot at, so I'm shooting the
I
Arizona.
meant Arizona.
Okay.
I don't know why I said Amagi. Probably because I
That's
was
okay.
just died.
I'm sorry. But that's definitely going to be my focus now. Now, if you have a friend of yours that's divisioning up, I should have mentioned this too. Maybe I'll think about this for future. Excuse me while I just kind of casually turn and dodge shells. Look at that rudder shift. Look at that rudder shift. Complete whiff. Again, why? Because of this rudder shift. Sexy. And the turning radius. If you've got a friend in a division with you, frankly, destroyers with smoke are really good friends for you. If you get in trouble, you can call for the smoke, or if you've got radar, you can even go ahead and smoke up, get yourself smoked, and then you just follow into whatever. Plane's coming, by the way, because the Furious is behind the island.
If he wants to drop his rockets from the front, he can be my guest.
Same
I'll
here.
take my chances.
You're in an EU
Speaking
clan.
of smoke, I have one left. Do you...
No, I'm good. I'm good.
guess-
Thank you, though. I'll call for it if I need it, but for right now, I am Gucci.
Stevie was up for a second.
Oh, yeah. He's up for more than a second now. I got one targeting me, so that tells me, look, I looked because I had one targeting me. I knew to look. And I saw the Nebraska shooting at me. And because of that, I dodged. Look at that. I'm slowing down. Why do I need to worry about moving forward quickly, right? I really don't care about these bombers. Furious is starting to turn, so I'm going to switch to AP. Targeted again, not targeted. Battleships are realizing there's other things to target. AP time. Ah, they're shooting Grunty. That's cute.
They do?
Somebody is. Bye-bye.
Victory is in sight.
Nice kill, Moore's Elite. I'll go back to HE to farm battleships. Now, note, I'm not turning just yet. I'm waiting to see. Nobody's targeting me. Now I know it's safe to turn. Somebody's targeting me. It doesn't matter. Hi, Bama. Bama's shooting at me, so I'm going to immediately slow down, because when I slow down, I turn tighter. I don't care. So there you go. Oh, look, I worked on task 2. I didn't even realize that. How'd I do? I came in 3rd place. Good job, Grunty, coming in 1st. And that's the USN Heavy Cruiser line. Like I said, if you're looking to division with people and you want to synergize well, a smoke destroyer, an American smoke destroyer, comes in really handy, especially at the high tiers. A carrier is a good choice too, because you've got good anti-air. So,
An Asian smoke destroyer can work really well if you want to be more mobile. They don't last as long, but you get more of them. And
So, chat, any other questions about the USN heavy cruiser line? I think we've kind of covered it. Yeah.
Just don't be too dependent on the smokes. Like in this game, for example, I had to use 2 of them for myself to not die. Like you can't be like in a cruiser. And I'm in the smoke cruiser, and I want to smoke every single time because that probably gets your destroyer killed. It's a
Right.
safety tool for them while they do the spotting work for you.
No, tier 7 is not low tier, but he was pointing out that Grunty came in first place, and he was the low tier in that game.
Way to go, Grunty. Way to show
Way to go,
off.
Grunty. Way to go, Grunty.
Yeah, it was
So-
supposed to be about the New Orleans.
Sorry.
Well, but I think I did. And please, this is going to go on YouTube later. YouTube, I'd love to hear your comments. Was this helpful? Was there something that I forgot? Was there something that you would like me to go into more depth? Or was this about the right amount? I want it to be brief enough to have a YouTube video out there that people would be happy to look at, but yet deep enough to where people can understand perspectives and that sort of things. So at this point, we'll go ahead and kind of cut out from there and just say thank you guys for being a part of this. This was a lot of fun. And if this works, if people like it, then by all means, we'll do more of it, you know?